By way of an agenda, just wanted to go through what we're going to cover during today's webinar. First of all, we'll do a little bit about what is computer system validation and why is it required. We'll also talk about a validation suite product that's available from Certara to assist with your validation of your WinNonlin computer system. We'll also talk about specifically what's new and different in the 4.0 version of that validation suite product. We'll do a quick demo of that product, and then we'll have time at the end for questions and answers. So to get started, what is computer system validation? A very quick definition is that it's documented evidence that a computer system does what it is intended to do. So a couple of notes about that definition. Computer system validation applies to the implemented computer system, not just the software. So you have to think about a computer system as consisting of the hardware, the software, the associated documents, any integrations to other computer systems, training, the people, all those bits make up a computer system. Software, such as Phoenix WinNonlin, is just one component of an implemented computer system. Another thing to remember about computer system validation is that it occurs in the user's environment and accounts for the user's specific requirements. So during validation, you would perform user site testing at your site using the actual hardware and software that makes up the computer system. So why is computer system validation required? There are many regulations and guidelines and guidance documents from domestic and international regulatory authorities and from other organizations which require computer system validation. Probably the oldest requirement is the US FDA CGMP regulations that were initially drafted back in the 1960s. And these regulations state that if a computer system is used, it must be checked according to a written program, which would be your validation plan for that computer system. There's also the final guidance from the FDA regarding general principles of software validation. There's also the guidance for industry from the FDA regarding computerized systems used in clinical trials. And that guidance specifically states that computer systems must conform to the sponsor's established requirements. Then there's Annex 11, which is a quality framework from the European Union, and it specifically states that in that framework for use of a computer system, the computer system should be validated. Additional guidelines, the International Conference on Harmonization, ICH, mentions that systems must conform to established requirements for completeness, accuracy, reliability, and consistent intended performance. The PICS scheme, or those guidelines, also state that validation must be done for computer systems. And then finally, 21 CFR Part 11, again from the US FDA, which states that if a system is intended to be Part 11 compliant, then validation of that system is one of the required procedural controls. Okay, so in terms of validating your Phoenix WinNonlin computer system, Certara offers a product that can help you with that, called the Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite. The Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite is a desktop application which includes quite a few things, as you can see on the screen there. The first thing we include is a computational models validation report. And this report summarizes the validation that we've done of the Phoenix WinNonlin computational engines against some independent standards, such as an NIST dataset or a pharmacokinetic textbook or another software application. The Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite also includes some validation process deliverable documents, and these are delivered as templates, which for all the documents that you might create during your validation project. So we include a validation plan template, a requirement specification template, a test plan template, traceability document template, and validation summary report template. So these document templates provide the content that can be used as the starting point for your validation documentation. The validation suite also includes nearly 200 detailed automated test scripts, which automatically drive the Phoenix WinNonlin software using the same user interface controls that a user would use during manual testing during the validation project, and then later on just during daily use of the Phoenix WinNonlin software. The validation suite also includes verified reference output, against which the output that's generated by Phoenix WinNonlin during testing is compared. And that way you're assured that the output that's being created by your Phoenix WinNonlin computer system creates output that has been verified to be scientifically and technically correct. The validation suite also includes the ability to create a customized test plan to test specific functionality of Phoenix WinNonlin. And this is done by using a subset of the supplied automated scripts and or custom scripts that you can develop. So this functionality allows you to only test the functionality within Phoenix WinNonlin that you intend to use as part of your computer system, because the guidelines and the regulations are very clear that you only need to perform validation of the functionality that you intend to use. And then finally, once you've executed some of those automated test scripts using the validation suite, the suite creates a validation run report which documents the results of that run in a Microsoft Word document. So you might be thinking, well, can I use a validation tool that's provided by Certara to test another product that Certara makes? And the regulatory documents that we mentioned earlier are very clear that you can, and because those documents include some of these statements. A customer may conduct a validation using their own personnel or may depend on a third party such as the software vendor. So Certara providing the validation suite as a tool that you can use to validate your computer system is acceptable to regulatory authorities. Another statement that's made in the documentation is that the vendor can provide information about their system requirements and software requirements, and then the customer can use that information as the beginning point for their required validation documentation. So again, that's why we provide those validation process deliverable document templates as part of the validation suite. And then the regulations and guidelines also state that the cooperation of the supplier is essential, and it's important for the supplier to anticipate the needs of regulated users in terms of what they might need in terms of software development lifecycle documentation and validation information. And again, we provide that information to you in the validation suite in the form of those document templates. So what are the benefits of using the Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite? The included validation process deliverable templates allow for rapid development of your validation documentation. You don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about, well, what do I need to include in this document? The templates provide probably 80% of what you need to include in your documentation. And then you would just apply whatever requirements your corporate validation policy or procedure requires in terms of required approvals or headers and footers on your documents or things like that. The validation suite automated test scripts provide benefit because that means that users or validation personnel don't have to spend a lot of time writing all the test cases to test that functionality. And then the automated test scripts also include all of the required input data sets and other files so that your domain experts and your scientists do not have to spend a lot of time finding or creating appropriate inputs for testing. And then finally, the automated test scripts run unattended, so there's no need for time-consuming manual execution of the test cases. So overall use of the validation suite can decrease the amount of time and the number of resources that are required to complete your Phoenix WinNonlin computer system validation project, therefore resulting in a decreased cost of your validation project. So that's kind of a beginning overview, and now I'd like to turn it over to Linda Hughes for specific information about version 4.0 of the validation suite.
Thank you, Deborah. Welcome to the second part of our webinar. So now that we've discussed some of the reasons for validation and we've talked about the Validation Suite product in general, we're going to talk more specifically about the changes that were made in the 4.0 release of the Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite. So to start with, what were the objectives of having a 4.0 release? First of all, the 4.0 release is to provide a version of the Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite that will support the validation of Phoenix WinNonlin 6.4. So anytime we have a Phoenix WinNonlin release, there are usually some user interface changes. And since the Validation Suite is driving that user interface, we also have a release of the Validation Suite that's intended to work with that specific version of Phoenix WinNonlin. The second reason is to provide new scripts or modify some of the existing scripts so you can validate the new functionality that was added to Phoenix WinNonlin 6.4. And the third reason was to provide a version of the Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite that has compatibility with some newer operating systems like Windows 8.1 or Windows Server 2012, since these are operating systems that are supported by the Phoenix WinNonlin 6.4. So we'll cover all the supported platforms for the WinNonlin Validation Suite 4.0. In terms of operating systems, we support Windows 7 Service Pack 1, Windows 8.1, and on those systems we support the languages of English, Japanese, French, German, Spanish, and Simplified Chinese. On the non-English environments, however, you will need to set your region and language to English United States. The location must be set to United States, and the short date format must be set to month, date, year. Now, the user's guide will give you all the information you need about making those changes. In terms of the server systems, we support Windows Server 2008 R2 Service Pack 1, Windows Server 2012 R2, and for servers, we only support the US English versions. So to be explicit, we no longer support Windows XP, Vista, or Server 2003. Okay, now let's talk about the compatibility of the Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite 4.0. It only works with Phoenix WinNonlin 6.4. It cannot coexist with prior versions of the Validation Suite, and that's true even if you have Connect or NLME or PKS validation suites. And this is due to the upgrade of Test Execute. So underneath, the Validation Suite is using a custom version of SmartBear's Test Execute to run the validation scripts. And it was necessary to upgrade to Test Execute 10.4 to support current operating systems. So if you're still intending to validate your PKS using the PKS Validation Suite, you would want to complete that before installing the WinNonlin Validation Suite. Also, any saved test plans, the VSTP file types from prior versions will not open in the current version, also due to that upgrade of Test Execute. And a general note, due to user account control in your operating systems, the Val Suite must be executed as an administrative user. I wanted to make a couple comments about the installation. You'll want to have Phoenix WinNonlin 6.4 already installed. Test Execute will be installed as part of the Validation Suite 4.0 installation process. So there's no separate installation for Test Execute. And all users are going to see a general warning at the start of a new Validation Suite 4.0 installation saying that you cannot have prior versions of Validation Suite or Test Execute. So if you see that warning, it doesn't mean that anything has been detected on your system. This is a general warning that's being shown to all users. Okay. So now we're going to go more into what actually changed in the 4.0 version. The negative tests that are in the environment setup test set, which demonstrate that the Validation Suite can successfully detect differences in compared files, are now going to be marked as passed or show as green in the test logs if the test case is successful. Now, in prior releases, the negative test cases were intended to fail because in general in the Validation Suite, if compared files don't match, that's considered a failure. So we had the negative tests failing. However, that was very confusing to many of our users, and so we changed it so now the negative tests are considered to have passed if they passed due to differences that were expected differences. We also believe that the Validation suite is now more stable, requiring fewer reruns of scripts due to fixing several defects having to do with how Phoenix is opened and closed by the Val suite, how it acquires a license, and also by changing some wait times in the scripts. So in Validation Suite, a script can fail for a temporary reason, such as a timing issue when the Val suite is trying to select a user interface object, but maybe the user interface hasn't fully loaded. But if you reran the script, it would pass. So that's what I mean by having to rerun a script. And that might be clearer to you when you see the demonstration of the Validation Suite. Okay, some options have been moved to new locations. So some options were moved to Tools options because those options are applicable to all installed Validation Suite test packages. And they were moved from the Tools Suite variables, which are applicable to only the Open Test package. Those options were the report directory location, the log file location, and the number of retries. And the number of retries is what controls how many times your script will try to re-execute if it runs into one of those failures that we just talked about. Now, we did just say that currently you can only have the WinNonlin Validation Suite installed. So this feature is going to be more important if we have future versions of the Validation Suite for other Farsight products. The PK1 clearance script now includes testing with weighting set to 1 over y hat, and that is 1 over the predicted value of the dependent variable. The script previously included all other weighting types except this one, so now this last weighting type has been included. The Validation Suite monitor has been removed from the product, and this was because our research showed that customers use their own IT controls, and we're not using the Validation Suite monitor. And a general note that all Farsight products will now use named user licenses, so that there will be a difference when you receive your license. Okay, so now we want to talk about some of the script changes in Validation Suite. So a new script was added called File Import Options, and it was added to test the following enhancements to Phoenix WinNonlin 6.4. There are options to ignore columns on import and to specify data type for each column on import. So if you look at the bottom right of my screenshot, you'll see a new Column Options tab, and under that you'll see an Ignore column. And if you check a box in that column, it will ignore that column during the import. And you'll also see a data type column where the type of the column can be set to numeric or text. Now, you probably know that Phoenix will try to figure out for you whether your data is numeric or text as it imports, but you might have like a subject column that's represented by numbers, but you'd prefer that be imported as text. So you can make that change here. There's also an option to skip worksheets on import, and that's shown in the lower left of the screenshot. So the lower left of the screenshot lists all the worksheets that are in a workbook, and by unselecting the worksheet, you can have that worksheet ignored during the import. And there's also a new option to parse units containing column headers during import, and that's as opposed to having the units on the second row of the data the way you might normally have it. So for an example, if you had a column header called concentration, paren, nanograms per milliliter, and paren, that you could choose on import to have the column header after importing be just concentration, and then have the nanograms per milliliter applied as your unit's property of the column. So the file import script is the only new script that we added, but we did modify some script to test some other WinNonlin 6.4 enhancements. The data wizard script now includes testing the ability to assign units that appear in a data column as the units of another column. So the type of data that I'm talking about is in the top part of the screenshot, and there's a column called conc units that contains the same unit throughout that column. And in the bottom part of the screenshot, you can see the data wizard, and this is using the data wizard to set the property of the conc column to have the units that are given in the conc units column. So the data wizard script has now been modified so it tests this new feature in Phoenix WinNonlin 6.4. Some other scripts that were modified are the table customization script. It now includes testing the specification of column precision in a custom table. The stacker script, or the STC script, now includes testing the ability to keep empty cells when you're stacking the worksheets. That's an option, so you can choose it either way. Okay. We have some new output in bioequivalence. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, on the average bioequivalence worksheet, we now have the t-values of the two one-sided t-tests. So we previously had the p-values for the two one-sided t-tests, but now we also include the t-values. We include the power of the two one-sided t-tests. That's a new output. And we also now do, for certain designs, a test for equal variances. And we can include the probability of equal variances in the output. So two scripts, the Example Guide Chapter 4 script and the Examples Guide Chapter 10 script, were modified so that they now validate this new output. And the difference between those two scripts is that the first is for parallel designs and the second is for a 2x2 crossover design. We also have a new ANOVA table in Phoenix WinNonlin 6.4 in LinMix and in bioequivalence. The Examples Guide Chapter 7 script was modified so that this new output is tested for linear mixed effects modeling. And the Beta Test 6 script was modified, so it now tests for this new ANOVA table. It also tests the two one-sided t-test output that we just talked about. And it also tests being able to specify the error term for an f-test if you have a fixed effects model. So both in LinMix and bioequivalence, you'll see a new UI feature where you can specify the test numerator and test denominator for a test that you would like to design. There's one known issue in Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite 4.0 that I want to mention to everyone. If the VS2 WinNonlin setup script fails, subsequent scripts will continue to execute. So this setup script, as anybody who's used ValSuite before knows, is always run before executing other scripts. It properly sets up the validation suite in Phoenix for further runs. So in the previous release, if this script failed, no other test scripts were executed, so you wouldn't have a cascade of script failures. In the current version, it no longer stops the execution. So we recommend that you verify that the setup script has passed if you're going to start off a large number of script runs. And if you watch the ValSuite, you should see that see it passing within 2 minutes, or maybe even 1.5 minutes after you start the script running. Okay, so we're now going to have the demo of the Phoenix WinNonlin Validation Suite 4.0. To save time during the webinar, I've already loaded the WinNonlin test package because it does take about ½ minute to load. And also I've run this setup script so we don't have to wait for that. So I'm going to show running the new script, file import options, and at the end, then I'll show the log files from that script. Now, an important note about running the validation suite is your test computer cannot be used during a validation run because of the way that the automated scripts are using the user interface. So you cannot be using your keyboard or mouse at all. So after I push the run button in the demo, I will not be touching my computer again, but you'll see that there's a lot of activity on the screen during the run. We're now in the Validation Suite product, and as I had said in the slides, I've already loaded the WinNonlin package, and I've selected the File Import Options script. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started running, and I click the Run button to get that script started. Notice that when I click the Run button, a Stop button appeared, and that allows you to stop execution if you do want to get control of your computer back. But note that it does take a little while for the run to stop because it may be in the process of executing a certain item. Okay, you can see in the upper right corner that the validation suite has started to work. And while the script is running, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the general usage of the validation suite. So to open the validation suite, you can either use the icon that will be placed on your desktop during installation, or you can use the Start menu on your computer and go to Farsight, where all the Farsight products are listed. To open the WinNonlin test package, you go to the File menu and select the Open Test Package item. Test packages all have the file extension PJS, so you'll be looking for the file WNL PJS to open the WinNonlin test package. And it takes about ½ minute to load, so you do need to wait while that loads. it will load with all the scripts selected to run, so then you deselect scripts until you get a test set of the size that you want to start a run for. Okay, I do want to point out now that our script has started running, that you can see that the script has opened up Phoenix. So every script in the validation suite will open Phoenix at the beginning, and it will close Phoenix at the end. And you can see how things look like they're being selected just like the user would do it if the user were running it from the UI themselves. You can also see how much faster it is than the user could type or click. So it does save time during validation. So we're going to let that continue to run. I'll talk some more about the menus. In the File menu, you can also save or load a test plan. A test plan is a selected set of tests that the user has decided they need to run. A test plan does not include run results, so you need to save run results separately. That's also done with the File menu. A test plan is of the file type VSTP for Validation Suite Test Plan, and results are of the type VSTR for Validation Suite Test Results. The last items in the File menu are options for creating, saving, and loading custom scripts. The reporting menu in Validation Suite allows you to create either a quick summary report or to create the Word document with a report of all runs. The Tools menu in Validation Suite has your options and suite variables that were discussed during the slides. And the Help menu has the Application User's Guide, which describes the Validation Suite in general, and then the Package User's Guide, which is specific to the WinNonlin Validation Suite. Okay, so the run is completed, and the status of the run shows as a success. I'm going to use this Show Log button so we can look at the log file from this Validation Suite run. So notice that it's color-coded for the type of messages, and the color codes are explained at the bottom of the Validation Suite. Any green line is where a validation step has occurred, and it will be green if the validation passed or red if the validation failed. We had no failures in the script, so there aren't any red lines. And I'll go down to the last validation step that was done and make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. And you can see here that what it was doing was a comparison of the output that was generated during this run with a reference file result that is installed with the Validation Suite. So it compared those two files and found that they were equal, and that passed that step.
Thank you, Linda. Now we're going to answer any questions that we have from the audience. We do have one question here that, Linda, I believe that you'll be able to answer for us. Can a person create a new script or customize existing scripts in the validation program?
Yes, the user can create custom scripts. A simple way to create a custom script is to start with one of the existing scripts in the Validation Suite. And there's a feature to export the script, which will make a copy of it and give it the proper name, because all custom scripts must start with the word custom. Then you can change this exported file using a text editor such as Notepad. And then the edited script can be imported back into the Validation Suite. Some example edits would be like changing an input data set file name because you want to use a custom data set. This would also require changing the names of the reference files used for comparison, and the user would need to have their own validated reference output in this case. Some other simple edits would be adding screenshots to a script or shortening the script if it covered more functionality than the user needed to test. For some more complicated changes to scripts, our services group offers writing custom scripts for customers for a fee, and they can be contacted through the sales contact information that will be given at the end of the webinar.
Okay. Sounds great. We are running up really close on the time, so we're going to just answer this one more question. I believe, Deborah, you'd be able to answer this. What are the test scripts tested against, and how can someone verify the accuracy of the program?
Sure. In each of the automated test scripts, there are reference files, which we have created in-house at Certara, in which a domain expert like a pharmacokinetic scientist or a statistician has verified that that output, whether it be a table or a chart, that it's scientifically and technically correct and accurately represents the data. If you wanted to review those verifications or anything else regarding the development of the Validation Suite tool or the Phoenix WinNonlin tool, you can always come and visit us in our Cary, North Carolina offices and do an on-site vendor audit, and we'd be happy to share that information with you.